Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Rebecca Zahau? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. So first I'll look at the background of this case. I'll move to the timeline of the death, then offer my analysis. Rebecca Zahau was born on March 15, 1979 in Myanmar, which at that time was known as Burma. For a time, Rebecca lived in Nepal and Germany. Sometime around 2001, she moved to the United States. In 2002, Rebecca married a 36-year-old nursing student. The couple lived in Arizona. In 2008, when Rebecca was working as a surgical technician in an ophthalmology office, she met a man named Jonah Shacknai, who was the founder and CEO of a medical cosmetics company based in New Jersey. He was exceptionally wealthy. The two started dating and would function as romantic partners. However, Rebecca was still married. She didn't get divorced until 2011. Rebecca was arrested for shoplifting in August of 2009. She had stolen $1,000 worth of jewelry from a Macy's in Phoenix, Arizona. She would plead guilty to this crime. Rebecca and Jonah lived together in Arizona. Jonah's son Max would spend time with them. Rebecca's family believed that Jonah's second wife, Dina Romano, who was Max's mother, wasn't too happy about Rebecca being in the picture. Rebecca left her surgical technician position in 2010 in order to spend more time with Jonah. She stopped going to church because Jonah did not go. From Memorial Day to Labor Day, Rebecca and Jonah lived at the Spreckles Mansion in Coronado, California. Jonah had purchased this property for about $12.5 million a few years before. In the summer of 2011, in addition to Rebecca and Jonah, Max and Rebecca's younger sister, Zena, were at the mansion. On July 11, 2011, Rebecca, Max, and Zena were in the mansion and Jonah was at the gym. Max fell over a second-floor banister and sustained severe injuries to his spine and face. Neither Rebecca nor Zena witnessed the fall. Rebecca discovered Max, and Zena called 911. Rebecca attempted to render first aid to Max. Max was transported to the hospital. They didn't know at the time, but he had been mortally wounded. On July 12, 2011, Rebecca's sister Zena left for Missouri. That same day, Jonah's brother Adam Shacknai arrived from Tennessee. Rebecca, Jonah, Adam, and a friend of theirs would have dinner together that evening. After dinner, Jonah returned to the hospital where Max was being treated. Rebecca stayed in the mansion, and Adam stayed in the guest house. Adam would later say that he had last seen Rebecca at 8 p.m. At some point that evening, a voicemail was left for Rebecca. The voicemail was never recovered, but Jonah said it came from him. He was providing Rebecca with an update on Max's condition. Max was not doing well, but again, we don't know what was in that voicemail. I think it's reasonable to assume that Jonah was delivering some type of bad news to Rebecca. On July 13, at 6:45 a.m., Adam claimed that he discovered Rebecca hanging from the balcony. At first, he thought it was a mannequin, but then he realized it was a human being. Rebecca was nude, restrained with ropes, and gagged with a t-shirt. Adam called 911 at 6:48 a.m. He cut Rebecca's body down from the balcony at some point before first responders arrived. Rebecca was pronounced dead at the scene. 3 days later, on July 16, Max would die from brain damage. Even though his death was ruled an accident 10 days later, a physician who treated him prior to his death said his injuries were inconsistent with a fall. The physician said Max may have been suffocated before sustaining injuries in a fall. No adequate explanation for Max's death was ever provided. It is possible foul play may have been involved. In September of 2011, the police announced that Rebecca Zahau had brought an end to her own life. Their conclusion was that no foul play was involved in the death of Rebecca or in the death of Max. These cases were closed. Rebecca's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Adam Shacknai, Dina Romano, and her twin sister Nina. The lawsuit alleged that there was a conspiracy to kill Rebecca. Dina and Nina were dropped from the lawsuit once it was discovered that Dina was at the hospital when Rebecca died. The lawsuit proceeded against Adam Shacknai alone. At the conclusion of the civil trial, the jury found Adam to be responsible for Rebecca Zahau's death and awarded her family $5 million. In February of 2019, Adam appealed the judgment. Before the final arguments could be made, Adam's insurance company reached a settlement agreement with Rebecca's family, paying them $600,000. Adam maintains they had nothing to do with Rebecca's death. He denied leaving the guest house on the night of Rebecca's death. So the first time he went back to the mansion was when he discovered her body. He was not there any time overnight. Now moving to my analysis. The question that comes up in this case most often, of course, is how did Rebecca Zahau die? Let's review the evidence in this case, including what was discovered at the scene. When Rebecca's body was found, she was naked, her hands were tied behind her back, her ankles were tied together, and she was gagged with a t-shirt. She was tied with red rope, which was the same rope that was used in the hanging. The rope had been tied around one of the legs of a replica antique bed in a second-story room adjacent to the balcony. The rope around Rebecca's wrists was not tight. There's a debate about whether the knots that were used were special, like if they were difficult to tie, would it require some type of special knowledge. The police had a demonstration where an officer used the red rope to tie her hands, pulled one hand out, put the hands behind her back, and slipped the hand back in. It did not look particularly difficult. Rebecca appeared to have 4 small injuries on the back of her head, which could have been made when she was falling off the balcony. Her head may have hit the balcony on the way down. A man's boot print was found on the balcony, but later it was determined that it belonged to one of the investigators. Only Rebecca's DNA and fingerprints were found on the rope, on the balcony, and in the bedroom. There were no signs of a struggle in the bedroom, on the balcony, or anywhere else in the house. A message was written in black paint on a nearby door. It read, "She saved him. Can you save her?" A book about witchcraft was found on a shelf in the bedroom. It featured drawings of women tied up and specifically mentioned how red rope could be used. Adam Shacknai was a tugboat captain in Tennessee. It stands to reason he may have been familiar with various types of knots. Sometime overnight, a neighbor claimed that they heard someone screaming, "Help, help," but the police concluded this witness was unreliable. Another witness claimed to see somebody matching Dina's description at the mansion the night before Rebecca's death. According to the autopsy report, Rebecca had no mental health issues. She was upset about Max being injured, but did not take an excessive amount of responsibility for the injury. When looking at the theories in this case, there are really only 2. Rebecca brought an end to her life, or she was murdered. The police believe that the first theory is the best explanation. What do I think happened in this case? I am compelled to agree with the police in this particular case. I think that Rebecca Zahau was responsible for her death. There are several reasons I believe this. Rebecca probably was severely distraught over the impending death of Max, which she just learned about by checking her voice messages. Perhaps before this, she believed he would recover. Almost anyone would have been severely distressed to learn of the impending death. In addition, due to the circumstances, that is, Jonah being in the hospital with Max, Rebecca was alone. She was coping with all these emotions without any support. There was evidence brought up in the civil trial to support the idea that Rebecca was impulsive. This is consistent with her arrest in August of 2009 and could explain some of this behavior. If Rebecca was murdered, how did the killer manage to avoid leaving any evidence? Again, at the crime scene, there were no DNA or fingerprints except those belonging to Rebecca. One of the police officers left a boot print on the balcony by accident, which indicates how easy it was to leave evidence of being there. What motive would Adam or any other potential suspect have to hurt Rebecca? He just flew in from Tennessee the day before. He had a life there. He had a job. He had a romantic interest. He played tennis, enjoyed live music. It doesn't make any sense that he would fly to California and murder Rebecca less than 24 hours later. Adam had attracted a lot of negative attention because of his personality and lack of sophistication, Some people in situations like this help themselves when they talk. That is not what happened with Adam. Talking was not his friend. In reality, those characteristics seem to point to a lack of involvement. It would have taken a master criminal to kill Rebecca and not leave any trace. Adam doesn't appear to be that organized. What about the fact that Rebecca was naked and tied up? I think this is why many people believe that Adam, or somebody else, must have been involved with her death. A big deal has been made over how it would have been difficult for her to tie herself up and then jump off of the balcony. In reality, it wouldn't have been that difficult. It's somewhat unusual, but she could have done it. She was intelligent and physically fit. Sometimes people in this situation will do this because they're worried about getting scared during the act and trying to rescue themselves. I think that not only explains her hands and feet being tied, but also why she gagged herself. She did not want to help herself, and she did not want assistance from anyone else. What about the words that were painted on the door? Do they point in one direction or another? Again, the message read, "She saved him, can you save her?" It's extremely unlikely that a murderer would leave a message like this. Certainly Adam would have no reason to have painted this on the door. Rebecca had experience using paint. She enjoyed painting. I think this message was a reference to what happened with Max. I think what Rebecca was trying to say is that she tried to save Max, but failed. Would somebody now come into the mansion and try to save her? In a way, this was a test of her value. If somebody would rescue her, like Jonah, it would prove that she deserved to remain alive. It would be vindication. This is consistent with her being tied up. She put herself in a position where her only hope would be that somebody else would save her. But she wasn't going to try to influence anyone to save her. They would have to come on their own volition. They would have to see her as worthy and make an effort to preserve her life. In addition, Jonah had told Dina that Rebecca saved Max by performing CPR on him. Here we see the term save being used in connection with Max and Rebecca. As far as the civil suit against Adam Shacknai, the standard for holding somebody responsible in a civil suit is much different than finding someone guilty in a criminal trial. It is a preponderance of the evidence. Was the probability that the person was responsible greater than 50%, even if by a tiny bit? I was surprised that the jury found Adam to be responsible. I think it says something about the quality of the wrongful death lawsuit, that two of the people were dropped from it right away, Dina and Nina. One moment, the attorney for the Zahau family was talking about how Dina and Nina were in some grand conspiracy with Adam, and the next moment, he was apologizing for having named Dina and Nina in the lawsuit. When somebody dies from an intentional act, it is not uncommon for people to look for someone to blame other than the person who died. People believe what they want to believe or what they need to believe. This enables them to build robust speculation on top of scant evidence. So I think this is a case where, because Rebecca Zahal died in such a terrible way, people feel sorry for her. They don't want to believe that she was responsible. It feels like saying that she's responsible is like victim blaming. But it's not. It's actually consistent with the facts in this case. She probably was responsible for what happened, although I'm sure she had various reasons, including the massive amount of distress that she was experiencing. Moving to my final thoughts, I think the key in finding the truth in this case comes from appreciating the devastating effect of Max's impending death on Rebecca Zahau. His death gets lost in all the speculation and sensationalism surrounding this case. Rebecca used to care for him, take him places, spend time with him. If Rebecca already felt like she was unwanted, if she already believed people looked at her and thought that she was just trying to get Jonah's money, if she felt as though people thought she was irresponsible and reckless, then the effect of Max's death would only be amplified. It would only serve to confirm all these different people's suspicions. Rebecca would move from guilt to shame under the weight of that perceived scrutiny and exact her own form of extreme justice on herself. Those are my thoughts on the case of Rebecca Zahau. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.